it's like I didn't not care, but it definitely wasn't like the forefront of my brain.
Can you tell me that story about, you were saying like you're from Chicago and there was the guy from the South and kind of, I'll let you tell the story.
So it was very interesting after I got into the military. During After I finished with basic training, I was sent to Colorado for my technical school training, and that's a very long process, almost a year. 5 days a week of training, 6 hours a day of intense training of my skill that I went into. And it was very interesting how in that environment, when everybody would say where they're from, how people got treated a little differently. And I definitely got treated a little differently for a couple of reasons. One, because I was in this special program that required a high aptitude of electronic background in math and science, I was the only black person in my class. So as you go through school, you go in like cycles, almost the same thing like juniors, freshmen, how I go through like that. So you know people behind you and you meet people who are ahead of you in class. But in my particular class, I was the only black person. And in the class behind me, it was only one other black person. He was from the South. I was from Chicago. And immediately I could tell they treated us differently in different kind of ways. One, when they knew I was from Chicago, I even had people who made comments to the fact that they thought I was badass because people thought that the thought was Chicago, South Side. I mean, everyone knew at that time Chicago was the second largest city at that time. I think maybe the largest African American population, or way up there, along with New York, and of course you got some different cities in the South, Atlanta and LA area, but Chicago is known for black. The South Side, black, tough. Chicago has that history. And how people prejudged who I was, and just by knowing that.
Are you from the South Side?
And I'm from the South Side.
Okay.
And I saw it, and how they even treated him. Now, he was from the South, from Louisiana, I believe. And they treated him like he was, like that kind of. It was really bad.
What does that mean?
I don't know, like he's sitting out drinking tea and like a country bumpkinish. I don't know what words I know that's really bad, but they treated him just like he wasn't intelligent. They treated him the way that African Americans in the South, that persona that we were given of this kind of like not very intelligent, very jovial. I mean, he was, they happy, but just wasn't very intelligent, and just kind of, you could say anything to him. Just did not treat him with the same equal respect as they would treat me, at least because I was from Chicago. So they may have thought the same way about me, but they definitely wouldn't even remotely treat me any differently, at least around in front of my face, where they would with him. And
how did that make you feel?
It made me feel really, really upset. And it also made me feel that I needed to constantly support him, which I wanted to do, to let him know that he is equal. I mean, at that time, I don't remember thinking that I was telling him, you need to check them or whatever. But I do remember he started to struggle in the coursework, and he started to believe that he really couldn't do it. And I remember there were times we would be together where I would just try to support him, let him know, you can do this, I don't think I ever told him, don't let them this, but I saw that he felt a confidence was lacking, and he was buying into that he really couldn't really do the work. That's also important, because what made me actually excel in it was because no one said it, but one of the first things that I encountered when I got there was a sense that eyes were on me. I was the only black person in this program. Not too many African Americans were in it. I had already saw what that looked like in Chicago, because African Americans weren't getting into technical degrees. They were trying to get people, just like now they're trying to get more women into the field. And one of the reasons why research has shown some women don't, because in our society we've made women think that they don't have the aptitude to do it. Women should be doing this, categorizing what we should do based on these stereotypes. And it's usually driven by what white males have deemed where our places are. So since I already experienced this kind of, why are you here? Because I got those kind of looks when I went to university.
Right.
I was already prepared, and I came in with this idea, I'm going to excel, and I'm going to be better than the next person in my class. And that's what I went out, and that's how I entered it, and that's what I did too. And I was one of the top of my class as I went through there because I had people looking and comparing and look every week when we would do our grades, turn in our homework and assignments. You know, where am I at? How did I fit? How are my grades compared to others? That kind of thing. So that I was very cognizant of that, and to think back on it, it really is. It upsets me that I had to actually navigate in that way. That I couldn't just be like the other person, my team, and just be judged equally, and not carry some extra baggage that I need to excel. I need to put 125%, and they only get to put in 70% and still move forward. That wasn't my experience. My experience was I needed to be putting 125% in if I want to move forward and continue in a positive way in the military. And that was very evident to me from day one. And I noticed that as each week would go by and I end up turning in grades, being, top of my class, how I was treated versus how my friend who was struggling a little bit, how he was treated. So for me, that was evidence to show I had to really do this, because if not, they're going to treat me like that, which is how they treat, and it could be a snowball effect. Then I would start not believing in myself, and then I would wash out the way he washed out.
Right. That makes sense. So do you know what happened to him?
He ended up changing career fields. So what the Air Force will do when you're in this particular time, when you're going through tech school, if you can't go through the curriculum, then they just find some other job that you can actually do. And he ended up moving off into another job within the Air Force.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is there anything did you ever experience racism, or did you ever, feel like some of your superiors were bigoted? Did you have any direct situations where you're like, that was fucked up?
I did not. I actually did not. I can honestly say that during the first 3 years, I did not. Everything was actually okay to a point.
Okay.
Now, what I will say is that after I finished school, I was sent to Turkey as my first duty assignment. And that was my first exposure to a different culture.
Mm-hmm.
What I did notice was how my fellow Air Force members, they're not all of them, but some people's experience being over in a foreign country. So before we even got there, they would have us go through these debriefings about, okay, you're going to a different country. This is how you need to act. You're going to see things that are different. I mean, they literally had to tell people this, although you would think they shouldn't have to tell people, be respectful, but they did. They would have to tell people, be respectful of other people's religion, But people would still actually violate that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard them make comments about Turkish people, have made comments about how they dress. Of course, made comments about their religion because they're Muslim, and they had religious practices that were different than a lot of theirs in there, and that they made comments to. So did I ever experience during my first 3 years directly to me or any racism to African Americans? Not the first 3 years. Did I see it towards other religions that were different when I was overseas? I did, and I did see that, and it was hurtful for me, and I didn't like that. So I thought everything at this point was great. But then that third year came around, and that's when I did experience racism.
Okay.
Firsthand. So I left Turkey, got reassigned back to the States, and I was in Southern California. I was living off base, and all this time I actually, of course, my homosexuality I was undercover, was not out.
Okay, so you were not out while in the military?
At all.
At all?
Yes, definitely not out at all. Was actually told by my recruiter, he said, I don't even want to know if you're gay or not, but as far as I'm concerned, if anyone asks you, you're not gay, period, point blank, don't even tell me you thought about it.
Did he know you were gay?
No, he didn't know.
No,
Oh,
but he
no
just
one did.
it was just a disclaimer he put
Yeah,
up.
he just said that. He just said you nothing, because at that time, if you had even hinted, because this is now pre.
When was
This
this?
was 1986.
Oh wow.
This was 1986.
Oh, I didn't realize. Okay, you look very young. I didn't.
Thank you.
I thought it was like early 2000s.
You.
Damn, really?
Yes, yes.
Wow. Okay.
You didn't even hint at being gay. If they even had a whiff, persecution, they'd be on you like, yeah. So you don't.
So there's that term, "don't ask, don't tell."
That was after I got in. That was during President Clinton's time.
Okay.
That was his compromise, because President Clinton had actually campaigned on gays being out in the military and pushed it, but of course he compromised. So he compromised with the "don't ask, don't tell," and that came in '92. I was already out. I was in, like I said, during the Reagan into the Bush years, and it was straight up conservatism, major in the country at that time, and definitely in the military. So you couldn't do. But the funny thing is, as a side story, you can sign up, you can work your ass off, you can do your part, which we did, and we all knew. It's like when I was in the military, a lot of people knew who was gay. I didn't have that trust to even let even an ounce of it out. So I put on my Denzel Washington hat on day one. No one was gonna know I was gay, but there were others, friends that I had or people that I didn't know, who were a little bit more open with their sexuality. Nothing happened to them, per se. I mean, they were able to navigate around it. So it was really weird. So, right, you had this, you better not let people know you're gay. But in certain communities, so to speak, in the military, what I saw, if they liked you, you could kind of skate by. If you did it undercover, you couldn't be flamboyant.